This past week, the market gave investors exactly what they wanted to hear, and then took it all back within 24 hours. What had happened was that a ceasefire rumor sent the S&P up nearly 3% in a single session, which was its strongest day since May of 2025. And then oil dropped back towards $100, so it genuinely felt like the worst was behind us. But then Iran's foreign minister called the whole thing false. No talks, no deal, nothing on the table. Oil shot right back up, and we closed out the week exactly where we started, in a fragile, headline-driven market with no resolution in sight. And to make matters worse, on Friday, 2 US fighter jets, an F-15E and an A-10 were shot down. And then a Black Hawk rescue helicopter was taken down during the recovery mission. This is a significant escalation, and it is exactly the kind of headline that could push oil prices even higher and add serious selling pressure when markets open next week. But that's not all. Stagflation fears are growing, and on top of that, newly proposed 100% tariffs on pharmaceutical companies could heavily impact the healthcare sector and trickle into the performance of dividend ETFs across the board. That said, it's not all bad news. Friday's employment data came in stronger than expected, and while that sounds like a straightforward win, the impact it will have on the market is actually not what most investors think. So what should investors prepare for this coming week? And more importantly, which sectors remain at continued risk? In this video, I'll break down every detail, walk through key technical analysis, and look at historical data on what sustained high oil prices have done to the global economy and how US markets have responded. The risk of renewed selling pressure is very real today, so make sure you guys stick around until the end. Now, before we continue, I have to mention that I am not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. This video is for educational purposes only and reflects my own research. Most importantly, past performance does not guarantee future results, and investing involves significant risk and potential loss of capital. So always consult a financial professional. Now, looking at the S&P 500, the index has broken below its 200-day moving average, and that matters a lot. Once you're below the 200-day moving average, that line stops acting as support and flips into resistance. The market needs a clean daily close above it before you can make any legitimate case for bullish momentum resuming. We already saw a clean rejection at that level this week, and we've seen this exact setup before. In March of 2025, the S&P broke below the 200-day under tariff pressure. We got a relief rally, a failed retest of the 200-day from below, and then another leg down before things stabilized. So one good day, even one good week, doesn't mean we're out of the woods. The 200-day is the line in the sand. Until we're back above it, the technicals are telling you to stay cautious. Now, as we know, tech, consumer discretionary, and small caps have been under the most pressure lately. And a big reason for that comes down to oil prices. When oil rises, inflation expectations rise with it. And when inflation expectations rise, the 10-year Treasury yield follows. And the reason this matters for growth stocks specifically is because these companies are valued based on their future earnings. When the yield on the 10-year goes up, those future earnings become worth less in today's dollars. It is essentially a valuation headwind built directly into how these stocks are priced. The 10-year is currently sitting above 4.4%, and for the first time since the rate hiking cycle ended, markets are starting to price in the possibility of another rate hike. This is a serious headwind for growth-heavy sectors, and if oil prices and geopolitical tensions continue to escalate, yields could push even higher. And of course, higher yields negatively impact the bond sector as bond prices and yields have an inverse relation. Now, one piece of good news this week was the employment data. Unemployment came in at 4.3% against expectations of 4.4%, and new job creation came in well above expectations at 170,000 versus the 63,000 that was forecast. This is a strong number, though it does follow last month's significant miss, so there's likely some catch-up happening in the data. And while on the surface this looks like good news, in today's environment, it has to be taken with a grain of salt. Strong employment gives the Fed even less reason to cut rates. And in a market that is already dealing with elevated yields and rising inflation expectations, higher yields for longer is not what growth stocks want to hear right now. But then there's healthcare. And this is an entirely separate story that I think most investors aren't paying close enough attention to right now. The Trump administration just announced a 100% tariff on patented pharmaceutical imports framed as a national security measure. That means any branded drug that has not qualified for an exemption is now facing a full 100% tariff. and companies have between 120 and 180 days before the full rate kicks in. There are ways to reduce it, and that's either through pricing agreements with the administration or commitments to move manufacturing back to the US. And the reason this matters directly to you as a dividend investor is because many of the most popular dividend ETFs carry meaningful healthcare and pharmaceutical exposure. When you hit these companies with a tariff that either forces higher costs or requires massive domestic manufacturing investment, you are squeezing the earnings that pay those dividends, and ultimately dividend growth slows. And if you guys want access to these amazing tools along with in-depth fund analysis, market insights, ETF breakdowns, and more, then I highly suggest to sign up with Seeking Alpha. You guys can use my link to get $30 off their annual premium plan. Or you can also bundle Seeking Alpha's premium plan with Alpha Picks and save over $150. I personally use Alpha Picks, and it is one of the smartest ways to supercharge your portfolio. Now, of course, past performance is not a guarantee of future results, and this is not financial advice. So you now have 3 separate sectors getting hit at the same time: tech and growth, bonds from the yield and rate angle, and healthcare from the tariff angle. All right, now let's zoom out and put all of this in the proper historical context, because the pattern we're living through right now is not new, and history is very specific about how this plays out. Every major oil shock over the last 50 years falls into one of the 2 buckets: short and contained, or long and destructive. And the single factor that determines which bucket you are in is duration. The 1990 Gulf War is the clean example of the first bucket. Oil spiked 75% in 2 months, the S&P fell roughly 20%, and then Kuwaiti supply came back online, prices dropped, and the damage stopped there. Painful, but manageable. Now look at the second bucket. 1973, the OPEC embargo sent oil up 300% and it stayed there. Inflation was already elevated going in, and the combination produced stagflation. High inflation, high unemployment, and stagnant growth simultaneously. GDP contracted, unemployment climbed from 4.6% to 9%, and the Fed had to take rates to 12% and still could not fully contain prices. Then in 1979, the Iranian Revolution cut supply and prices doubled within 12 months. Fed Chair Paul Volcker ultimately had to take rates all the way to 20% to break the inflation spiral. Another deep recession followed. In both cases, the damage was not caused by the initial spike. It was caused by the fact that the disruption did not resolve quickly, and it landed on an economy that was already under stress. That distinction matters enormously right now, because across those recessionary oil shocks, the S&P saw peak to trough declines averaging 20 to 48%, and recoveries that took anywhere from several months to nearly 3.5 years. Non-recessionary shocks, where the disruption was short-lived, saw the S&P recover quickly and in some cases deliver 20 to 25% gains in the 12 months that followed. So here's the honest conclusion for where we are right now. The Strait of Hormuz is still disrupted. Iran has rejected every peace proposal on the table. Oil is up over 60% since strikes began in late February. We are not in the short and contained bucket yet, and we entered the shock with inflation already above target, consumer debt elevated, and growth valuations that were historically stretched before any of this started. Those are the same background conditions that turned the 1973 and the 1979 shocks from corrections into recessions. That doesn't mean that a recession is guaranteed, but it does mean the risk is real and it's not being fully priced in. And investors who are treating this like a temporary blip could be making the same mistake that people made in 1973 and again in 1979. Duration is everything. The longer this drags on, the more the second bucket becomes the base case. Now, shifting gears to what is coming next week, because this is where things get really important. PCE on Wednesday and CPI on Friday. 2 major inflation prints in the same week. If either comes in hot, any remaining conversation about rate cuts this year ends immediately and the discussion shifts towards hikes. And if it lands that way, expect volatility. Now, if you want to be in the room where this gets discussed before it plays out publicly, I break all of this down in detail in my private Substack community. You can find the link in the description below. We're almost at 3,000 members now, and we'd love to have you. Stay informed, stay positioned, and I'll see you in the next one.